You can see that's a little B at the bottom of the script. This is the DEA number, the physician's DEA number, and there isn't anything that precludes a physician from providing a patient with several 60-day prescriptions. So I discussed actually this proposal with Dr. Rick Baer, who is the retired internal medicine physician who's co-chief petitioner of the act, and he described it as a proposal to limit the medical marijuana program to the 1% that, and anybody earning less than $40,000 a year couldn't afford to go to a physician every 60 days. And again, and respectfully, Senator Cruz, I couldn't find any Oregon law requiring this. And although there's a limit to how far out a physician can prescribe medication, Schedule II medication, it doesn't limit the physician from providing multiple copies of the prescription. And in any event, because marijuana has such a high LD50, because it's unlike prescription medications, no one's ever died from using marijuana. It's just not appropriate in this context. And that's all I have, and I appreciate your patience. Thanks, Chairperson Speed.
Thank you. Who wants to go second?
Thank you, Chair Przansky and members of the committee. My name is Todd Delato. I'm from Philomath, Oregon. I'm a horticultural scientist specializing in cannabis, as well as a public policy consultant. I'm the president of CAN Research, Education, and Consulting in Corvallis. I'm a constituent of Senator Boquist, and he introduced this bill on my behalf. I also chair the advisory committee on medical marijuana, which advises the Oregon Health Authority on the administrative aspects of the program. We didn't want to take up too much of your time this morning, so we encouraged people to limit the public comments so we're not flooding your hearing room today. So I strongly encourage each one of you to review the audio archive testimony from the February 7th House Senate Healthcare Committee hearing. There's a wealth of compelling testimony on medical evidence and patient testimony as well. That's very valuable. As Mr. Berger stated, the Oregon Health Authority is charged by statute to promulgate rules to review petitions, to add conditions to the Oregon Medical Marijuana Act. He eloquently explained how that is flawed. From a scientific perspective, the rules are proven inadequate for ensuring a fair review and decision-making process for the following reasons. Because of lack of protection against bias, prejudice, and conflict of interest in both the panel selection criteria as well as the decision to approve or deny petitions. Lack of the requirement for the decision to be based upon scientific evidence. The meetings of the expert panel were not public hearings. And the lack of consideration of the effective federal ban on research, on medical research with cannabis by the DEA, FDA, and National Institute of Drug Abuse. In June of last year, the Public Health Division was finally convinced that these flaws necessitated an overhaul of the review process. Thus, a Rules Advisory Committee was convened, which I was appointed to recommend changes to the administrative rules with the goals of establishing protections against bias, prejudice, and conflict of interest. That goal was not met. To enhance accountability and transparency, that goal was partially met. To establish clear criteria for decision-making, that was partially met. Establishing a fair selection criteria of experts, that was partially met. And to streamline the process for greater efficiency and cost savings, that was met. The Oregon Health Authority's Committee on Advisory Committee on Medical Marijuana, which I chair, unanimously and enthusiastically supports the addition of PTSD to the list of qualifying conditions, as well as supporting the rule change goals that I just stated, as well as the Rules Advisory Committee, which I was appointed to, and also to most people who testified during the public comment period during that rulemaking process. In the finalized text, as I noted previously, only one goal was fully met, most were partially met, but the most important goal, to protect against bias, prejudice, and conflict of interest, was not met at all. And this is very important in the evaluation of evidence and policy making with cannabis. Because this rule does not ensure an objective review of future petitions to add debilitating medical conditions, and due to the bias that existed in prior to petition processes, patients who suffer from post-traumatic stress and other debilitating medical conditions are still unable to rely upon the administrative process to consider their condition fairly. Therefore, the addition of debilitating conditions by statute is the only remaining way to ensure people suffering from medical conditions that are safely and effectively treated with medical cannabis can be protected for their use of medical cannabis. So I strongly urge you to support Senate Bill 281 with the due pass recommendation so that Oregon can become a place where returning combat vets and others suffering from terrible traumas can feel more safe and protected here at home in Oregon. And to also address the two amendments, I supported you passing this bill without those dash amendments. Specifically to the dash 3, requiring someone to renew their card every 6 days. As someone who has been advising the Oregon Medical Marijuana Program on the administrative aspects since 2001, for the very first time, the program manager was able to report that they were able to return cards, to issue cards within the statutory requirements of 30 days for the first time since the program was created in 1999. This staff undergoes a tremendous backlog of applications, which has only recently improved. So just the administrative headache of turning over an application in 60 days is unfathomable. Not to mention the effects upon particularly the lowest income and uninsured for having to go see a doctor every 60 days just to sign some paperwork. I think that decision should be left to a doctor and the patient to decide what the best course of follow-up care is. So please support this bill with the due pass recommendation. I'm happy to be available for any questions you have.
All right, Brian, you're next. You have Dr. Coleman. We have 7 other people besides these 2 that still need to testify. So your remarks hopefully will be a little shorter so we can get the other people that are here who want to testify, get their on record too. Brian?
I'll try to be brief. My name is Brian Michaels. I'm an attorney in Eugene, Oregon. Senator Brzezinski is my senator. Myself and the next witness, Dr. Cohn, wrote an article for the Register Guard back in October. Did you folks receive that this morning?
We did.
Okay. I am a member of the ACMM, the Advisory Committee to the Medical Marijuana Program, and I would like to start first with the dash 2 and dash 3 amendments before I get into the bulk of my remarks on PTSD. I find dash 2 to be almost humorous in the sense of I'm not quite sure why the author of this dash amendment was so concerned with the firearm issue as the prime purpose of informing these folks about federal prosecution. I want to know a connection, and I don't see it, why that would be something the Oregon Health Department would talk about in its literature to its participants. We talk about firearms. Where did that, I'm not sure why that would be the issue. Federal prosecution is already informed by the OMMP2 participants that what they're doing is against federal law. I'm not sure why that is insufficient and why firearms came to be an issue. But on to dash 3, I need to echo Mr. Delato's remarks, having been with the ACMM for some time. It's amazing how much work their staff does. They've had some staff cutbacks like everyone else in the state to increase their workload 6-fold. I'm certain whoever introduced this dash 3 amendment had not consulted the OMMP, who would be the ones actually doing the job. Because I'm sure they would be here telling you, please don't do this to us. This is borderline. insanity is borderline torture because we can't do what we can now, which is different than consider the people, whether they're disabled or they're working. How difficult is it going to be for them to go every 60 days to a doctor and to take off work? They have to charge their insurance company. They may have to charge a working health plan. They may have to charge Social Security. They have to set an appointment with the doctor every 60 days. Well, essentially, as soon as they get their card, they're going to have to begin the process of reapplying almost immediately. It's a thinly veiled, punitive amendment to the Oregon Medical Marijuana Act. On to my remarks about PTSD. PTSD, as you may be aware, is an identifiable, recognized medical condition. It has identifiable diagnosable symptoms, including night terror, severe antisocial behavior, a constant state of anxiety, unfamiliarity with yourself and surroundings, and a constant state of instability. This causes great havoc on one's personal life, one's ability to work, one's family, one's friends. These people live in a tortured world all day long. And make no mistake about it, most of the people that suffer from PTSD are our veterans. Now, whether you're a liberal or a conservative, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican or an independent, or whether you were for the wars or against the wars, we're all for and honor our troops coming home. And make no mistake, this bill is about serving our veterans. It's not about the politics of marijuana. That's a misdirection. Because in reality, we're not going to really be increasing the number of people who use marijuana. Because any one of us, if faced with this disease, if faced with this horrible life, was given the opportunity to choose marijuana as a treatment, which is the only noticeable, identifiable, effective treatment. If you had the choice to be in living hell or live like a normal person with your family, you would take it. And let's face it, most of us would. And so what you're really doing is saying, am I wanting a veteran to choose between being a criminal or being treated? And so you're really not increasing the amount of marijuana because most of them are going to use it anyway. What you're doing is you're decreasing the amount of their doors that get broken down, their children that get taken away from them, their parents that get put into prison. You're giving our veterans the freedom to do what they need to do, to live among us safely and healthy. You're not really increasing any marijuana use. It's a really important point, because that is the misdirection that people who are against this amendment are going to say. And it's just not true. If any one of you lived that way, you would use marijuana. You have to. It's torture not to. So we're only asking that you let our veterans be non-criminal citizens. They've served us so much, and they've come back so ill, so disabled, so tortured. Why can we not give them this one thing? There really is no answer. It's really a no-brainer. Ask any vet who has PTSD and has used marijuana, and they'll tell you that. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Dr. Cohn?
Hello. I'll try to be brief and not repeat what others have said. I'm a psychiatrist who had worked 35 years at jail, at Lane County Mental Health, Marion County Mental Health, and Serenity Lane during much of that time. And I talked with patients and families confirm the fact that for many of these folks who were in jail, for instance, for minor infractions or drug-related offenses having to do with cannabis, that they were stable and manageable and productive at home when they had access to the medication. And when they didn't, for one reason or another, they became a risk to the community and a real problem around the house. The availability of having this medication without the risk of incarceration was something that families repeatedly requested to me, although I had no ability to accomplish that at all. I wanted to say something about the proposed amendment of 60-day repeats, which really is not, of revisits, which really is not a requirement of any scheduled material that I know of. They do only allow a 60-day prescription for Schedule IIs, but physicians get around that by writing a half a dozen prescriptions with different dates so that the patient doesn't have to come back for a year. Marinol is Schedule III. It has none of these kinds of requirements, and it's a riskier medication and a more difficult medication to utilize than cannabis by inhalation. Schedule IV medications, which have none of these requirements, include Taurin, a potent opiate, tramadol, soma, and benzodiazepines, which are addictive, potentially lethal in overdose, and quite risky, and physicians write those for better or for worse for extended periods. If a 60-day revisit is required, doctors are going to refuse to be involved because they're already busy and they don't need additional busy work that might thrust requirements onto them. And patients, some of them having difficulty mobilizing and coming out into the community, are going to be hesitant themselves to make this kind of commitment. I think that that amendment is disingenuous and would appear to make the possibility of using cannabis for PTSD practically impossible for a large percentage of individuals who might otherwise benefit from the medication. I would really welcome any questions if individuals want to ask anything specific about my experience over the years at the jail and at treatment facilities attending to these folks.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Cohn. Let me see if there's any questions here on the panel. Thank you, gentlemen, for stepping forward. Dr. Cohn, you're more than welcome to stay online. If you want to listen at this point, it sounds like you may already have us up on your computer. So what is your choice?
I'll listen on the computer, and thank you very much.
Well, thank you for your time. Have a wonderful day. All right, folks, we have a number of people that still want to give testimony. I don't need to ask one question or two people. Marion Pope, you checked the box of living more than 100 miles from here. Can you please tell me where you live?
Medford, Oregon.
All right, please come forward. And Lori Duckworth?
Yes. Medford, Oregon.
All right, y'all two come on up. We have a courtesy rule for those who travel over 100 miles. And Jennifer Val, looks like Valley. Why don't you come up with them? And ladies, I hate to tell you this, I want to try to get another panel up. I have about 18 minutes at most.
We'll make it brief.
That'd be wonderful. I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to testify.
I came on the 7th and I testified about my husband.
For each of you, I need you to give us your name first and then your
I'm
testimony,
sorry.
please.
I'm Mary Hope, and I'm glad to be here. And I testified on the 7th before the committee about my husband, William Hope. And I would like to reiterate how incredibly important marijuana was to his life. He would have not survived had he not had marijuana in his life. They made him quit once to be able to have medication, and it made him suicidal because of that medication. It would have been impossible for him to go on a repeated basis of 60 days to the doctor to obtain something to say that he could smoke. He did not do well in public. He stayed home mainly. My daughter also has PTSD from childhood molestation, and she's got agoraphobia. For her to go to the doctor, she makes 5 appointments and maybe goes once of those 5 appointments because it takes her that much to build up to get there. It's for those people that suffer, is that it is a horrific thing to try and talk to other people about what's happening to them because they don't want to share, they don't trust anyone. So it's even more difficult allowing them to have this for a period of time that 1 year and not making them repeatedly go to the doctor is got to be the most sensible thing for those people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who'd like to go next?
Thank you for hearing us today. My name is Lori Duckworth. I'm the Executive Director of Southern Oregon Normal in Medford, Oregon. We successfully sat next to the federal courthouse, as many of you may know, for 4 years. I have a member base of 4,000 members. I service a lot of veterans there at the community center. Many of them have to choose between their pharmaceutical medications and cannabis, even though the VA has lackadaisied a bit on their approach with cannabis. We hear often that there is such a high number of OMMP patients that qualify under the chronic pain diagnosis. They must use that diagnosis, but they're truly treating their PTSD. We are 14 years into this program, and we truly need this qualification. We need this diagnosis so that we don't have to qualify those veterans, and not just veterans, but many, many individuals, such as Mary just spoke about her daughter, my husband, who is not a veteran, who is a survivor of childhood molestation. They need this diagnosis so that they don't have to go under that cloud of chronic pain. I ask that you please consider passing this without the amendments. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jennifer?
Hi, thank you very much for having me here. I think it's important to understand that when you leave an abusive relationship, your chances of dying by violent homicide go up by 80%. And in a hostage situation, if your captor gets you into a car, your chances of survival immediately drop by 85%. The first time I left an abusive relationship, I was almost 19 years old, and I was stopped for a month and a half. And when he caught me, he kept me for 5 hours, and when I went down the tunnel and light flashed before my eyes, and I'm pretty sure I was dead for a minute. And he brutally raped me, and I spent the next 20 years having nightmares and scream terrors and not coping well with folks. But I was lucky he let me go, because 6 months later, another stalker happened to take notice of me. And when he caught me, he kept me for almost 6 months, beating me, raping me, drugging my food, got me pregnant because running away is harder with a baby on your arm. And I actually had to hide in a swamp for 2 weeks to get away from him. And when I was diagnosed with advanced cancer, I was told that if I wanted my child to go to anyone but him, I would have to get his permission. So that made death not an option, and I had to go through a lot of things that I would have rather just given up and died, but I didn't get to. Marijuana has had a huge impact on my life. It's made it possible for me to cope with night terrors. It's made it possible for me to cope with flashbacks. It's helped me to gain 40 pounds and stop seeing my doctor for 50 hours every year. It's changed my entire life. I'm the only person in my family, my generation, that didn't join the military. And I know how those folks feel about the PTSD, and it's a huge stigma. There's no shame in talking about cancer, but there's a lot of shame in talking about rape. And even in sexual aggressors who didn't rape me, usually they tattled on me for fighting back. And it made the PTSD worse. These things have been going back 40 years. I was 5 years old the first time someone tried to kill me. This doesn't just happen to soldiers. Children are abused, adult women are abused. It's a much larger population, and we don't speak out because of the stigma. 80% of rapes are not reported. And I just needed you to understand that it's not just soldiers, there's a lot of people that need this. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming forward and telling your story. Is there any questions for this panel? Ladies, thank you very, very much. Okay, our next
Thank you.
panel will be Gerard Townsend, Nick, I believe it's Mellis, and Anthony Taylor. And whoever would like to start with.
I'm Jared Townsend. I'm a combat veteran of the Iraq War. Today, I'm here for 5 of my friends that couldn't be here. And the reason that they died was because they were prescribed pharmaceuticals from the VA in massive doses, and they ended up overdosing and dying. At that point, I chose not to take pharmaceuticals anymore, and practically in fear of my life. And ultimately, I believe that's why I've been able to be a productive member again of society. I'll be graduating in a couple months, but I couldn't have done any of this without medical marijuana. Also, I'd just like to bring up a huge disparity between what you see and what we actually feel. I've been waiting for medical discharge for 6.5 years. I have stacks of paperwork up to here, and I've been nothing but fought with the whole time. And my choice to use medical marijuana has been a conflict in the National Guard, and I have not been going for the last 1.5 years. But there's really no choices. Do I choose between death and living in hell? You give me Prozac, it takes 4 weeks to freaking kick in. I can go smoke a bowl of pot and be fine and normal and functional again. Or something that'll kill me. And I choose not to do that. But I feel there's no representation for us. We go fight your wars. We come home. We live in hell. We want to commit suicide every day or shoot someone. And I've gone to Congress about my medical discharge, and there's been no help. We're still waiting. My estimated time in service, I should be out before any of this even starts to go through. But then the National Guard says, hey, you're gonna lose your benefits if you're smoking pot. So now all the benefits that I just fought for to get for 3.5 years, I could potentially lose all that. And I'm not sure if you check the suicide rates with veterans, but they're pretty freaking high. What's not working is the VA and the pharmaceuticals. What works is medical marijuana. I wish I could stop 5 of my friends before they went and killed themselves and said, hey, smoke a bowl of pot and let's go talk about this. But I can't do that anymore. Their children can't do that. If you think it's a joke, it's not. I don't care about the politics of this. Let's save our soldiers that fought for you. It's time to fight for them. And with the 60-day thing, that's not gonna happen. Because what am I gonna do? Go redo my card every 60 days? Well, there's gonna be no doctors to redo it because they're so busy with everyone else's. It's not gonna work. I think it's just a ploy to clog the system. And how's the revenue gonna work with that? I mean, I'm a finance major. It's pretty easy to see that by the time I get my card, I'm applying for another one. I gotta schedule an appointment, which takes 1.5 weeks. Now you're messing with the medicine. So now I'm going in between breaks if I don't want to smoke illegally. Oh, then I have more pressure from the federal side. So I'm just fighting everyone, and it's hell. I'm tired of fighting. I've already done enough of it in Iraq. So I just ask you guys to fight for us. Find in your hearts to stop suicide.
Thank you. Nick?
All right, my name is Nick Phillips, and to start this out, I had a question for the panel up here. How many of you have served in the United States military? Any branch, doesn't matter. None?
I was in the National Guard, my daughter's in the Navy.
Daughters in the Navy? Okay, did you do any combat tours, sir?
Hopefully not, because she's gonna be in a nuclear submarine.
I was talking about you, sir.
No.
No? Okay. That's just my entry into, you guys can't really grasp what we go through when we come home. Really tough for me to be up here right now, I'll admit that. I didn't make the last one because I didn't feel comfortable being here. A little backstory on me, 2009, 2010, I served in Iraq. Lost a few good buddies over there. Along with Mr. Townsend here at our home unit, we've lost a few up there as well. Suicides, drinking and driving, drug overdoses. Along with Townsend, if I could have stopped him and said, try this instead, it'd still be here. So on top of all the stress that I deal with coming home with my wife and son, I have their deaths on my shoulders as well, because I didn't go out of my way to try to get them to do that. Without medical marijuana, I have it for my back. It's not why I use it. I use it for my head. It levels me out. It makes me think before I react. Now, without that, I'm a very harsh fellow. I lose my mind pretty easily. I rear-ended a car when I was living with Jared Townsend. Flipped some guy's grocery cart in the store. That was when I was going through my phase of trying to stop smoking marijuana. It didn't work out for me. The reason I tried to stop, I popped off when I came home from Iraq for marijuana. Lost my ass. Demoted me. I stayed at PFC for 2.5 years prior to ETSing. When I tried to re-enlist, get everything back on track, they said no. Why? Because of my back and my PTSD. So for them to deny me, but yet you guys not be able to pass this to help us, I'm really at a loss of words. I mean, we talk about supporting the veterans, but you load them up on pills when they come home and they die. That's it. They just die. You're not taking the proactive actions to stop that. I mean, I randomly get bottles of pills in the mail. I don't know what they are because they swift my prescription so much. I have 30 bottles of pills sitting in my cabinets that I don't use. My wife hates marijuana. Loves when I smoke because I'm normal. That's all I gotta say. I can't talk anymore.
Nick, thank you very much for coming forward and sharing your story. Anthony?
Chairman Brzezinski, thanks for hearing our testimony today. And members of the committee, my name is Anthony Taylor. I am the Director of Compassionate Oregon. And I'm a veteran, I'm a card holder, and I'm also on a pain management contract. What's happening at the federal level with the Veterans Administration is they're beginning to ease their policy for patients that choose to use cannabis in conjunction with their other medications, whether it's for pain or for traumatic stress. And to date, none of the national veteran service organizations have taken a position on PTSD, and there are members of American Vets for Medical Marijuana working with these service organizations to get resolutions drafted so that their support becomes evident and they begin to start supporting efforts to allow cannabis be used in conjunction with other medications. And because of this, the Veterans Administration is kind of throwing it back into the laps of the state because their hands are tied. You can't take controlled substances onto the federal property, and there has been these issues where you're denied your medication or services in general because you're a cannabis patient. And so I would hope that this committee, as well as the legislature as a whole, would take the action to adopt this measure and allow the states to start showing the Veterans Administration that they're okay with this, to allow the Veterans Administration to continue to ease their policies. A recent report by the Army Surgeon General has indicated that the level 2 drugs that these gentlemen have been prescribed in most instances are very, for the most part, non-effective, and that cannabis, not the Army Surgeon General's opinion, but that cannabis can be used in conjunction and is in fact one of the safer, more effective treatment modalities for PTSD.
Anthony, as we do this, we're already out of time. I need you to please summarize. I have one more person who needs to give testimony.
Quickly, I would just like to say that we need to take this action to help not only our veterans, but the ladies that spoke before, and also our first responders. They are presented with trauma as much as anybody. So I would ask committee to please consider passing this bill without the proposed amendments, and thank you folks for allowing me to testify.
Anthony, thank you very much, and thank you for summarizing. Gentlemen, again, thank you very much. I can only imagine the difficulty you have being before us, but I can tell you your testimony is valuable. Without it, we would not be as informed as we are. So thank you very much for coming forward today. Thanks. Sir.
Thank you, Chair Krasansky, members of the committee. I'm Senator Betsy Close. I am opposed to Senate Bill 281. Colleagues, an old saying, count the costs. Before you do anything, count the cost. I would urge you to do so on this bill and others we are considering regarding marijuana use. Please consider the other side of this. Having been a teenager when marijuana first appeared en masse in the late 60s, I have seen the devastation of the long-term effects of chronic marijuana use. For example, a close relative of mine who is nearing old age was a Phi Beta Kappa in Wisconsin, got a BA, very bright man, and he was in graduate school in California when he began to smoke dope. At 40, he could no longer add. And he now has COPD, a bronchitis emphysema disease that is fatal. There is no cure. He was never able to conceive a child, and he lives on Social Security. Marijuana does damage the body, and especially the brain. I'd like to call your attention to a research article that I have kept for years, for decades. I give it out to young people, teenagers mostly, I know, who are smoking marijuana. It has two parts. It's called Marijuana Alert, Brain and Sex Damage, and Marijuana Enemy of Youth. It summarizes research that was done many years ago, but I don't know why it wouldn't be true today because the marijuana is even stronger now. The International Symposium on Marijuana was held in Reims, France in 1978. It included 50 researchers from 14 countries. And they presented studies about marijuana's injurious effects on reproduction, lungs, cellular metabolism, and the brain. In 1979, there was a conference in Virginia sponsored by the National Institute on Drug Abuse, which revealed more evidence of harmful effects on the reproductive system. And 3 months later, there was one done at New York University Medical School, dangers caused by chronic smoking and marijuana. Just to very briefly summarize, I know we're out of time. One of the problems is that marijuana is often compared to alcohol, but they're the same. They are not. Alcohol is water soluble, if you remember from your chemistry in high school. THC is fat soluble. It is stored in the fat tissues of the body for many years. And the main organ that has fat surrounding it is the brain and also the sex organs. This research found that with brain scans and research that was done on rhesus monkeys, that the synapse in the brain began to widen, and there is brain damage. And this is all in the article, so I won't go into detail. The reproductive organs are affected. The sperm count goes down. The number of ovaries, the number of eggs that are released by women decreases. That would explain why my relatives were able to conceive a child. And this is all documented by research. So, in conclusion, are we going to go from PTSD to COPD? Is that the answer here? It has been said today, let's save the soldiers who fought for you. Does this save them? I'm not sure that's true. I want them to have a better life. I don't want them to depend on drugs the rest of their lives. I grieve, or as we all do, over the rapes, the abuses, the terror of combat. My father was a World War II vet. But are drugs our only solution for our deep problems? Is this the best we can do? There are other therapies than drugs. Are we pursuing those? Are our vets going to be more safe and protected? We have to answer that question. All drugs have side effects. This drug has documented brain damage and sex damage. And that is our decision here. Possible sterility. And why is it never realize the great potential that is in them. And that is the sadness that I feel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Close. So just for the record, what we have been handed to us, which will become part of the record, is a Reader Digest reprint titled Marijuana Alert. It looks like it's copyrighted in 1979. So that will be part of the record. What I'm going to tell, first I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing on Senate Bill 281. We have, we're getting to the point where we're, say, our time is becoming more tight. This bill, Senate Bill 281, will be scheduled for work session next Wednesday, a week from today. Senate Bill, SJR 34, which is a bill that was scheduled for public hearing and possible work session, will be carried over until next Wednesday for both public hearing and work session. This is one that the chair has brought forward for sitting judges as well as JAG members who want to be able to teach in public law schools but find that they're in a conflict. We'll roll to that next week. And I understand from what we've already said on the record, Senate Bill 188 is more than likely will be rescheduled, not rescheduled, will be scheduled for a work session later, but we have to wait until amendments are done. And 2025, we take action on that for
Committee, I met with the parties outside, we voted on the effective date of September 1. I can easily amend it again.
So we're going to go ahead and set that for next Wednesday as well. That would be Mr. Taylor's next day, which I believe, if I got that right, all of those.
You want to say anything before I turn it off, Glenn?
Yes, good night.
Good night. God bless you all, every single one of you.